discovery of the 19 million US dollars quantity of narcotics, dangerous substance, cocaine, that up to now continuing to be a subject of controversy that appears to have had several government or state actors implicated. It is interesting that of recent, I think yesterday, the Police Inspector General Gregory Cuomo announced the indictment of one of the suspects that were named as being culprits to the commission of drug trafficking. It's interesting because, first of all, it has been close to a month or more since there was this intercepted consignment of cocaine at the Ramos International Airport, with government demonstrating interposition of different statements, clarities upon clarities every day, none of which has produced any credible investigative exercise to establish a basis for the public to believe that the actual individuals that bear the responsibility or the supreme responsibility of trafficking have been pursued. And so for the Director of Police to have paraded with Paul King, having charged and incarcerated at the Monrovia Central Prison, which in my view is intended to quiet the growing public controversy surrounding demands to name what has been coined as the big fish, is appalling. Because we know that international traffickers, if I know international drug traffickers, especially experienced traffickers that may have operated or that may be operating from the South American country of Colombia, that is allegedly the source of the cocaine under investigation, will now send a consignment of $19 million worth of cocaine, dangerous cocaine resources, without a trusted domestic or local cartel or local network that will be expected to manage, to operate, if not finance, the movement of that cargo. And so the assumption or the perception being created by the police that of all the perceivably local traffickers or collaborators in what has now been identified as a cartel, that Porking is the only big fish, is a regrettable lie that is intended to mislead public opinion and continue to shield the cartel. International traffickers will now send $19 million volume of cocaine to Liberia and expect it to be cleared, transported, and conveyed by street hustlers, individuals, some of whom may not even have the capacity to rent a room for themselves. People that are at the lowest ebb of society are being perceived to be the traffickers or the conveyors of cocaine. This is a part of the lie of government, and we've come to expose that lie and to establish a clear basis for the masterminds of this drug operation to be arrested, to be prosecuted, and convicted where the evidence leads. So it is within this backdrop that we started, or we will continue a campaign to investigate these persons with a determination to clear the innocent, indict the guilty in the alleged $19 million cocaine scandal. Our call is not to render any individual guilty, but rather to establish the basis for individuals that may be involved in the handling of the national security apparatuses to be a part of the investigation. So you cannot have Gregory Common, police director, who appears allegedly to be implicated in the mishandling of the investigative process, to continue to preside over that process. You cannot have Mr. Kofi Woods, who is the country's national security advisor, to be involved in an investigation, whereas he bears the responsibility of national security mechanism to ensure that such dangerous cocaine resources or dangerous substances will not be smuggled on Liberian soil. The head of the Rabos International Airport, the head of the National Port Authority, the officer in charge of the Liberia Drug Enforcement Agency, of course Paul K, and even the son of President Mulbah K, who is also alleged to be a part. His individual should be part of the investigation. You cannot lead any credible investigative process with individuals that have national security oversight to be a part of that process, because they either knowingly or unknowingly may have facilitated this cocaine smuggling in a tune of $19 million, or that the process of $19 million worth of cocaine being smuggled on Liberian soil constitutes a massive national security failure. And by virtue of that failure, individuals that have national security oversight bear direct operational responsibility for this failure. So they cannot continue to preside over any investigative process that will have them presiding or providing oversight, because they need to be answering questions as to their roles, as to their responsibilities, as to their involvement, or as to their possible collusion in that criminal enterprise. So from that backdrop, we reaffirm or reiterate our position that Colonel Gregory Common or Mr. Kofi Woods, or the head of the Rabos International Airport, the head of the National Port Authority, the officer in charge of the DEA, who is said allegedly to be a very close friend to Mr. Common. In fact, we are hearing that this man continues to be a police deputy commissioner. So he occupies dual capacity. While he is the head of the DEA, he is continuing to say yes sir to Gregory Common. And we are hearing disturbing revelations that the two persons have unholy relationship. That will be investigated further to establish authenticity. I mean, we don't care about how they conduct themselves as individuals. It is their freedom to do so. But their relationship, if that relationship will infringe on the integrity of their professional responsibilities to the state, then it has to also be subject to scrutiny. So you have the head of DEA that answers yes to Gregory Common, and there's a problem with that. You cannot be the head of the Drug Enforcement Agency that said from day one that the discovery of $19 million worth of cocaine constitute a serious criminal enterprise that you graded as a transnational organized crime, and then announce that you will not call name because that could jeopardize the investigative process and you need a time. Up to now, they've called no names except 5 persons. So to learn that this man, Biago, was recommended by Gregory Common, police director, and that this Biago continues to be deputy police commissioner to Gregory Common. So what transparent investigative process are you conducting if the chief or the officer in charge of the DEA is the one expected to give details about the drug boss, and whereas this man is still answerable to a man that is being suspected of tactically shielding one way or the other traffickers or drug suspects. And so that is a troubling revelation. And so we think just as Biago should step aside or should be suspended by the president until the investigative process establishes his innocence or involvement, or Mr. Gregory Common that should also step aside because he cannot continue to preside over the investigation whereas he's been suspected of shielding or drug trafficker. So whether he's involved or not involved should be established or should be determined by an independent investigation to establish the fact. So just as this, the NPA managing director, the cocaine came through the port. It didn't come through a spiritual process. It didn't come to Liberia magically. It came through the port of entry is the National Port Authority, where he is the managing director. He needs to be answering questions because we are learning that GLS, the Global Logistics Services, that is in partnership with another Wage and Bills entity, has warehouses at the Freeport of Monrovia. He's the managing director. So how can $19 million worth of cocaine resources coming through the port of entry, where he's managing director and he's not part of the investigation? He has to be part of the investigation to determine his innocence or his guilt. And just as, of course, Paul King is now being prosecuted through the court of law. That's the right thing to do. Mr. President Barker's son, Willie, is also implicated. We're also hearing about the other son being implicated. So you can now begin to understand why there's so much difficulty in naming individuals that are considered big fish in this huge cocaine bust. We are not demanding for the big fish to be named only because we want to target people. No. We want to ensure that Liberia is not a transit point for drug smuggling. We cannot provide corridor or safe route for the movement of cocaine resources because it jeopardizes our democracy. Cocaine smugglers, drug smugglers can even impact the outcome of elections. So we do not want a situation where in West Africa, smugglers found our soil as a safe haven for the movement of dangerous cocaine resources that may be disruptive to our democracy, to national stability, and to the development of the young people. So we will keep pushing until the individuals that are culpable of the commission of drug smuggling at the highest echelon will be revealed, will be prosecuted, and convicted consistent with the due process of law. So that's the reason for these images. This does not constitute all the suspects. These are some of the people that we know. We know there are international icons that are not been named. So we continue to dig deeper until we arrive at that point where all those involved in this dangerous domestic cocaine network are uncovered. Now, with that said, it was interesting to know that as Mr. Gregory Conway yesterday appeared to have been satisfied with the pronouncement of Paul King as an indictee suspected in charge for drug smuggling or the movement of the 19 million cocaine resources, that 5 suspects were named. Now, it has been a little over 1 month since the cocaine was discovered at the Robert International Airport. I say discovered because when the cocaine left its various safe houses, it spent more than 3 days at the RIA. From the 5th of June, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th. So what were state actors doing on the 5th, on the 6th, on the 7th, before the 8th? So we are aware that that question is answered by the fact that it is the American intelligence officers or sources that elected government. Had it not been the United States intelligence capacity in the country or capability, we would not have known about the $19 million worth of cocaine that was smuggled on Liberian soil under the watchful eye of Gregory Como, police director. Under his watch, the drugs entered into the country from the NPA. Under his watch as National Security Advisor, $19 million worth of cocaine entered on Liberian soil. Under his watch as the head of the Rabos International Airport system, drugs were smuggled. It took 3 days before international partners could alert the local security apparatus of the smuggled drugs. Under his watch, the best friend of Gregory Como, this man recommended Biago, as it has been revealed, to be officer in charge at the DEA. So if this man colluded with local traffickers or a shielded local traffickers if he's not going to talk, because this man is still an officer under the jurisdiction of Gregory Como. He's police director, he's deputy police director, even as we speak today. So to expect him to remain in office while there's an investigation that suspects this individual, and to expect him to remain in office while there's an investigation, ongoing investigation, is a mockery and a travesty to the judicial process. And they need to step aside, all of them, or to be at least invited to the investigation. So they cannot investigate themselves. The entire security of the apparatus is suspected of other shit. Very arrogant, unrepentant, unapologetic. And this man cannot continue to preside as chief investigator, whereas he's been suspected of collusion. So the Stand-led protest coalition insists that Gregory Como should step aside. If President Mulbah K refuses to do that, it is within his prerogative. But then he will bear the responsibility of the owner of the cocaine. It means he has chosen to teach his legacy by the shielding of individuals known to be drug traffickers at the highest echelon of governance who enjoy the protection of the presidency of the country. He along with all these security actors. They may be innocent, who knows? But how do you establish their innocence through an investigative process that they must also submit to? So this is intended to demonstrate our determination to have this or give them an opportunity to be investigated to establish guilt or innocence, as we prepare to unapologetically, irreversibly come outside on July 17 to ensure that drug is kicked out of our country and impunity is ended. All the people that were indicted, besides Paul Jamal King, are out of the country. When the protest started, they were all in the country. Maybe except one. Michael Brown is out of the country. He was indicted by Gregory Como in absentia, meaning he waited for him, perhaps, to leave the country before indicting him. Maybe indicting this man in his presence could have led to spilling beans. Maybe he could have talked. So perhaps, suspiciously, they gave him room to escape and then indicted him in absentia to simply meet public desire or public demands. Not just him alone. Oscar J. Brown is in absentia. Usman Ali is in the UK in absentia. It is interesting for you to know that it doesn't make any sense that 1 month ago, on the 8th of June, this man, this Biago, said the scandal that was being dealt with was transnational organized crime. Transnational means that those that perpetrated the smuggling are individuals that are international and others are local. And their names are all strategic or important that he may not call their name early. They need to be investigated until it's exhausted. Up until now, they've called no one's name. So it simply appears to us that when they said it was transnational organized crime, they were simply buying time to control the public relations narrative and perhaps disrupt the investigative process. And true to their strategy, all those that have been indicted besides Paul King are out of the country. Here is a travesty. Paul King was indicted by Gregory Como, this Paul King, as general manager for the Global Logistics Services. They even indicted the Global Logistics Services, where he comes from. The institution he comes from was indicted. He's the general manager. But the CEO of GLS was not indicted. So there are twin traffickers. Paul King is one of the twin. His brother, who is Peter King, is the chief executive officer of Global Logistics Services. So the manager was arrested, but the CEO refused to be arrested. I'm using the word refused because when he was named and invited, he refused. Officers went to his house, we learned. He refused to cooperate. He went to the GS officers. He went to the officers of the DEA on his own. Refused to submit to an investigation. Up until today, he remains above the law. I'm talking about Peter King, the CEO of Global Logistics. You indict the manager. You indict the company. But the CEO of that company that created the company in Nigeria, that is in Liberia, has not been indicted. He's still enjoying the comfort of his home, alone, and continue to stay obliged. So all that demonstrates to us that there are people who are considered above the law, big fish. And Gregory Coleman knows them, likewise all the other actors, apparently, and we believe it's time for them to come clean. And the only way, in my view, we can get to the bottom of this matter, is for the investigators that appear to be complicit, that appear to be suspects of the drug scandal, step aside to allow an independent probe to establish guilt of innocence of those that may be the mastermind of the cocaine smuggling or cocaine scandal. It is not possible that the boys that have been arrested are the ones that brought the cocaine into the country. No international smuggling network operates internationally. We send $19 million value of cocaine to another country without a local network that has the competency, that has the resources to receive and move that particular consignment. So the traffickers from Colombia, that is said to be the source of the $19 million drug, could not send their $19 million drug to Liberia and entrust it into the hands of wheelbarrow boys. No. That whole process of receiving, of preserving, and moving the $19 million drug must have been entrusted in the hands of senior government officials. And by the activities of these quote-unquote investigators that appear to be compromised, we know that there's more to the cocaine story than what we know. And so to get to the bottom of it, the likes of Colonel Gregory Coleman has to step aside for a continuation of an investigative process that will establish the truth of the matter and indict individuals that bear the responsibility, if not the greater responsibility, for the smuggled cocaine. Now, with that said, it is unfortunate that before our eyes, President Walker had made it a signature project to fight drugs, is allowing the country to degenerate into a cocaine state, where the image of our country is being destroyed internationally. President Walker must understand that it is not just his legacy, but the legacy or the integrity of governance of our country is being destroyed. The image of this country is being destroyed. He cannot sit idly by and allow our country to be a safe haven for drug trafficking. He needs to do the needful. He needs to stand up and not to sound like a broken record perpetually. At one point he comes up and says, no stone will be left unturned, or if anyone is involved, the law will take its course. There is no sacred cows. He said that twice without action. Those that are the smugglers are not in the jungle, they're not in the bush, they are right here. They're in the city. They're in offices. Perhaps some in President Walker's office. Because we are also learning that when the cocaine entered Liberian soil, our territorial perimeters, that the cartel repackaged the cocaine and put a diplomatic stamp to it to allow for easy movement internationally without inspection. So someone in the president's office must have been involved in handling that, because diplomacy is exclusively the prerogative of the president. So who are the foreign ministry or who in the president's office and And I'm not surprised hearing Mandela Kopa's name surfacing. I don't have any proof to indict her publicly for this, but it raises suspicion. And she also needs to be a part of the investigation. And it is very, very much disturbing that we are also hearing that the vice president of the country, Jeremiah Coon, is said to be suspected. And he also not above the law. He also needs to submit himself to the investigative process. So when it comes to cocaine and the commission of crime or atrocities, be it economic, be it movement of cocaine resources, no one is above the law. There will be no sacred cows. The vice president must also be questioned. So I saw a statement yesterday, but to say I'm not a part or I don't know what happened is not sufficient. We need a team of credible, independent investigators to dig deeper and arrive at the truth. So if Jeremiah Coon is involved and he's been suspected, and let me tell you this, the journalist that spoke, even though he didn't say expressly that Coon is involved, but Coon's relationship has made him a subject of investigation. And I respect the integrity of that journalist. Brother Shield is a journalist of integrity. He's a journalist of respect. He's renowned both domestically and internationally. So when such a credible journalist speak out about a given national issue that has brought the image of the country down in the mud, then we've got to take his comments and his investigation very seriously. So we're not saying that anybody is convicted or indictable for drug smuggling, but there is a swirl of suspicion surrounding these individuals, whether it's Gregory Cuomo, whether it's Kofi Wu, whether is this Huge from the RIA, whether is Sekou from the NPA, whether is Biago from the DEA, or Paul King has been incarcerated, or Buckett's own son. They all need to be called to question. The vice president is not above the law. He also must be called to question. We need to know how $19 million worth of cocaine entered Liberia's soil. How? It didn't come through spiritual exercise. Nobody just prayed cocaine appear. It came. And it was facilitated. And it's interesting that when Okomas has indicted or has charged him with facilitation. And to facilitate grammatically is to help the movement of cocaine. So if he is a facilitator, who are the actual masterminds? Who was he working for? Talking about Paul King. Who was he helping? So if he thought he would just throw Paul King out there in prison and to quiet the demand for justice and transparency, he's sadly mistaken. Because his activities, insulting at the Senate or attacking senators, being very arrogant, trying to invade the investigative responsibility, in some cases lying, giving contradictory statements, allegedly lying, and making contradictory statements, all add up to the need for credible, independent investigators to dig deeper and break up the fight. The Americans should help us. The Europeans should help us. I'm sure they are willing, but they will not just come and help in the vacuum. The president must make a request and must begin with asking all these guys to step aside or have them suspended to initialize an independent investigation into how $19 million worth of cocaine entered Liberian territory. Now, it's interesting that Gregory Cuomo, after 1 month, and this should awaken the interest of the media, Cuomo just said that the cartel tried to bribe security officers. He said that. He didn't say that at the beginning of the investigation. So if he knew that, what was he waiting for to say after 1 month? Why didn't he say it at the beginning of the investigation? He pretended not to know these things, and he just revealed it. So small. They are confessing little by little. So if the cartel attempted grabbing security officers, then we ask, who was Ben Brown? Which members of the security apparatus and apparatuses were attempted to be bribed? Did they take it? Because we are hearing that $13 million was thrown around by the cartel in the initial stages. $13 million was thrown around by the cartel. Did they take the bribe? Who took the bribe? If they took it, were they investigated? Were they prosecuted? So All that unraveled Desmond as a person of interest, Gabriel Como. You cannot be suspected of collusion, alleged collusion, and preside over that case continually as an investigator. To get to the bottom of this process, these individuals need to step aside to allow for the conduct of a credible investigative process to establish guilt, culpability, or innocence. With that said, we'd like to express how proud we are, how happy we are for the endorsement of the Student Unification Party today that endorsed the July 17th protest. We say hats off to them. We commend that very useful endorsement, and we congratulate them for making a decision that will resonate throughout history as driven by a desire for the collective good, as we work together on July 17th to ensure impunity will be curtailed, to ensure drugs will be kicked out of Liberia, to ensure the demand to arrest the big fish will resonate than ever before, and government will be reasonably pressured, relentless pressure, to institutionalize good governance, democratic governance, and to rid our society of criminals that are responsible for the country's downward spiral as we strive to develop our democracy and move our country forward. So we appreciate that endorsement very highly, like all the other endorsements before that endorsement, and we want to use this platform to call upon the civil society, different actors in the civil society community, political parties to come out and endorse this process. This is not about any individual, it's about the collective good. Liberia is slipping downwards. The country is being misgoverned by state actors that appear to operate with impunity, and it's time for Liberia to stand up and say enough is enough. If Joseph Boakai, and this goes to politicians, if President Boakai is misgoverning at this level with graphic disregard for the general population that continue to be disenfranchised, that continue to bear the brunt of bad governance, if he care less about democracy, if he care less about good governance, if he care less about the safety of the people, emboldening the police to brutalize peaceful citizens, what else will he do in 2029? So you know that the country is at serious risk, and democracy is being eroded, and it's time to stand up and show that this country is rescued from the cliff of destruction. A few months ago, even a few weeks, he appointed Jonathan Wheeler as the chairman of the Elections Commission. Wheeler is an unapologetic independent party ideologue that was calling fake results in 2023 for Joseph Boakai. If that man is allowed to preside over the affairs of the Elections Commission, you can almost rest assured that there will be no free and fair elections in 2029. So Liberians need to rise up for these different reasons: good governance, the deplorable economic state of the country, or the escalating corruption, the rise of impunity, police brutality, drug smuggling in the country, etc., and etc. No president has demonstrated extreme weakness and callous disregard for the people like Joseph Boakai. The time for the people to rise up to say enough is enough has come. And July 17 is that moment when Liberians in their tens of thousands will rise up in a relentless chorus of dissent, peaceful dissent, and say to Boakai, we cannot share a country where drug traffickers are allowed to roam about free. Drug traffickers, drug trafficking masterminds, cocaine smugglers must have their place only at the Monrovia Central Prison after going through a due process of judiciary investigation or prosecution to establish guilt or innocence. And so we'd like to say thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen, on a short notice. And we look forward to your coverage of the July 17 process, and I can assure you that that will be the biggest peaceful protest could ever be staged on the various soils. Thank you.
No question.